Welcome everyone. This is the Indian Express of 21st September 2022. So I will explain this news in 3 steps. First is why is the news? Second is what is the news? And third is what can be the future prospects of the news. So you see, first news is since 2014, fourfold jump in ED cases against politicians. 95% are from opposition. So why is this news? Because yesterday there was a news of CBI cases against politicians. Now comes the ED cases. So what is the current situation? 115 opposition leaders when 2014 to present NDA second. 115 opposition leaders were investigated. What about UPA first and UPA second between time period 2004 to 2014? 14 opposition leaders were investigated. So yesterday we have seen in explained page about what was the CBI role and how exactly it functions. Today there is also an explained page of behind the ED's lengthening arm. So this is given here. We will get to know what are the functions of ED and how exactly it works in the context of government, which is ruling government. So you see, first page don't have any important news as such. So then comes the city page. Also more of city page. Okay, so this page has some news. Government and politics. Thinking centered around polls will not do any good to cities. This was by Prime Minister Modi. He was inaugurating Mayor's Conference in Gujarat. Why exactly this news has come? Because you see, mayors, this was a national Mayor's Conference in Gandhinagar, and Mr. Modi was virtually present there, so that is why this news has come. What was decided, what was the discussion there, we would see. Election representatives should not think just in terms of elections, as it would not do any good to cities. So he's talking that do not think just about election. He was virtually addressing nearly 150 BJP mayors, deputy mayors and elected representatives at the National Mayors Conference in Gandhinagar. What he said in his speech was the thinking of elected representatives should not be restricted to only elections. He said, when with election centered thoughts, we cannot do any good to cities. Many times decisions are taken with the fear that it might result in election loss. So he's not talking about taking risk. You take risk while thinking less about next election. He said in his inaugural speech, stating that this conference has a major role in developing a roadmap for country's urban development for the next 25 years, which is during the Azadi Ka Amrit Kal. And why this is Azadi Ka Amrit Kal? Because 2047, it has been pledged that by 2047 our country must become a developed country. So this period from 2022 to 2047, this 25 years are Azadi Ka Amrit Kal. Sharing his own experience as the CM of Gujarat, Modi added that when the state government decided to celebrate 2005 as an urban development year, at that time the decision was questioned. More than 100 to 150 points, including removing encroachments, were part of it. What are encroachments? Illegal, or you can call illegal infrastructure, and removing them were part of it. So this is the work of You see, mayors, when it began, BJP leaders came to meet me, asking how it could be taken up when corporation and panchayat elections were approaching. So if this is very topic serious, that if you are encroaching some buildings and your elections are nearby, then there are more chances that you can lose. People see you as an aggressor. But I said this cannot be changed and we should build people's confidence. When we remove encroachment, the ones affected get angry. This is true. Those people whose buildings, investments, infrastructure are encroached get angry. But my experience was different. When we start the drive with honesty, people came forward. Everyone started removing whatever they had encroached. And as a result, road became wider. So he is now talking that if you do good, everyone starts supporting you. When we work for people's good, we get their support. Now stressing on creating satellite town to reduce building pressure on cities. PM cited Panchkula and Mohali around Chandigarh as an example. You see, these are satellite town. Not a massive city like Chandigarh, but they have their own significance. And also Pethapur near Gandhinagar is being developed in a similar way. Modi also stressed on the development of Tier 2, Tier 3 cities with planning by the cities and economic centers. Talking about that, you should not only concentrate on Tier 1 cities, also try to make these second and third tier cities an economic center where trade can occur, where people can buy and sell things. Also, investment from foreign can come, which is foreign direct investment. Industries can be set up. More and more startups can occur. Talking about the important urban planning and development, Modi appealed to the participants of the conference to cover every section of the community. He said majority of the population does not go to big malls, but their needs are fulfilled by small hawkers. Do we have a scheme for them? I appeal to all mayors that all hawkers should be registered under PM Swanidhi Yojana and then trained on digital transactions. You see, digital transactions are more and more used nowadays, but these hawkers do not have such systems now. So either people do not buy from them, or people who have cash only buy from them. So once in a year there should be a summelan of these hawkers with their families. Their children should be awarded for the talent. They are a big force. Now coming to explain page, you see more teeth and bigger muscles. ED's lengthening arm. What about ED? In the 8 years from 2014, this Directorate of Enforcement ED has investigated 121 prominent politicians and has arrested, questioned, raided or filed FIRs against 115 major opposition leaders. By contrast, during the 10 years 2004-2014 of the UPA second, only 26 leaders were investigated, including 14 from the opposition, and now this is 115 by this government. Since the advent of Narendra Modi government, ET has gone after politicians suspected of corruption with far greater alacrity than other central law enforcement agencies. So it said that nowadays, in the advent of this government, ET has gone after politicians more than any other law enforcement agencies. What is PMLA? Prevention of Money Laundering Act, passed in 2002. The ED's sword arm. This is the main thing, can call main act that ED uses. ED's aggression has been largely on account of its current director, Sanjay Kumar Mishra, since 2018, and then his predecessor, Karnal Singh, 2015-2018, who was before him, leveraging the massive power bestowed on the agency by PMLA. You see, they are actually leveraging this power that PMLA gives them. Unlike laws governing other agencies, particularly CBI, PMLA allows ED to take cognizance of any offence under its wide-ranging schedule across the country with or without the consent of state government. So these are mostly, you can call, semi-autonomous bodies. They can take any case under themselves with or without the consent. So it has therefore been able to register money laundering cases against politicians or activists based on FIR filed by state police forces, something that CBI is unable to do it unless requested by state government or ordered by a court or the CVC, Central Vigilance Commission. We have seen this yesterday, that CBI have to take permission from the state government to file cases. But this ED has been able to register cases against politicians because it does not need the consent of state government. While the NIA, which is National Investigation Agency, it too has power to take suo motu cognizance of offences across the country. But the schedule of NIA Act, National Investigation Agency, that is, the types of offences that it can investigate, is limited to about a dozen offences. But you see, this PMLA and this ED has a wide range of cases that it can seek. But NIA has a limited number of cases that it can seek. It can only seek about a dozen, 12 offences. Schedule of PMLA, on the other hand, has increased from just 6 offences in 2002 when the law was enacted to 30 group of offences. Now there are over 147 provisions. Now you see, NIA has only 12 dozen offences, while PMLA 147 provisions. It can seek 147 types of cases. ED's sweeping ambit extend from serious crimes, for example terrorism, to hunting of wild animals, also from the infringement of copyright to false trademarks. All of this come under ED. The provisions of PMLA which give investigator the power to arrest. So there are certain clauses, certain provisions under this act which give investigators, ED are the investigators, the power to arrest and attach property and assist of accused. So they have the power to arrest, they have the power to attach properties and assets of accused. Then they can impose stringent bail conditions, strict bail conditions, and also can make a statement recorded before an investigating officer admissible in court as evidence. You see, this has made all these powers have made ED much more powerful than the CBI. It is now becoming increasingly stringent, more and more strict. Strictness is coming in this PMLA as well as ED. The PMLA ambit was widened through the amendment 2009, 2013, 15, 19, giving the ED the teeth it now has. You see, many cases are there. 2009, criminal conspiracy under section 120B of the Indian Penal Code was added to PMLA's schedule among various other offences. This criminal conspiracy under section 120B was added. This has over the years allowed the ED to enter any case. You see, any case where a conspiracy is alleged. So if ED sees that there is any conspiracy that is occurring, which is a form of criminal thing, then it can enter such cases, even if the principal offense is not part of PMLA schedule. You see how wide this thing is for ED. In 2009, the ED also got international jurisdiction as far as tracking laundered money was concerned. So, in order to track this money laundering thing, it also got international jurisdiction, a green light from there. Then, what occurred in 2015 and 18? There were amendments, and ED was allowed to attach properties in India equivalent to properties acquired abroad through laundered money. What that means? It means that if any person have been accused, or you can call he has found accused and then found guilty of this money laundering case, then whatever the land or any asset or any property he had bought in abroad, the same money, same equivalent to that property is acquired in India. He is forced to give that money to Indian government. Though certain explanations inserted into the PMLA in 2019, government allowed the ED to attach properties directly or indirectly through alleged criminal activities that was even relatable to scheduled offense. So they give this power, either the properties indirectly or indirectly. But if it is under through criminal activity, then it have to be attached. Contentious provisions. What are that provisions that make it more strict? PMLA's provisions on admissibility of a statement made by the accused as evidence and the stringent bail provisions have been the most contentious. It is the only act in the country in which a statement recorded before an investigating officer is admissible in the court as evidence. This is the first act that the statement recorded before an investigating officer from the ED, whatever the statements are recorded, can be put in the court as evidence. Other laws that contain such provisions are TADA and then POTA have long been repealed. These two laws have had such provisions, but these laws have been repealed now. The provisions for bail stipulates that a magistrate will not grant bail. What about bail? The magistrate will not grant bail to an accused unless he is convinced that prima facie no case is made out. So what is prima facie? So on the first view, this means that if there is no case made out of it, then only he can be granted bail. This provision was struck down by Supreme Court on the ground that it pre-supported the trial stage of bail itself. But a larger bench headed by Justice A.M. Khanwilkar on July 27 this year, he upheld the validity of the provisions of PMLA, including strict bail conditions in money laundering cases. He supported it. He supported that this is valid. Also, strict bail conditions are valid in money laundering case. This has resulted in accused being put behind bar for longer periods. Why exactly? Because you see, bail conditions are very strict. So what is the situation? The accused have to be put behind bars for long period without bail in offense that attract punishment ranging from 2 to 7 years, literally making the process the punishment. So for 2 to 7 years, this is the punishment, and they are in the jail for at least 2 to 7 years before the case is in trial or starts. So making the process the punishment. Now bigger and more fearsome. Under Director Mishra, ED has applied these provisions on suspected offenders with much great ferocity than before, with much great speed and strength, even as the strength of agency has increased from the motley group of about 400 officials under the UPA to now 1600 officials now. Now ED sanctioned strength is over 2000. You see, this is the ED's expanding scope of work. And also this expansion is reflected in the number of cases it has taken up lately. Under UPA, ED registered 1,867 cases of money laundering, which involved 112 raids, also attachment of properties worth 5,346 crore. What about NDA? Until March 2022, almost double the number of cases, 3,555. Number of raids, 3,010, 27 times more. And attachment worth rupees 99,356 crore, 10 times higher than the UPA. You see, more are the numbers. Out of 3,555 PMLA cases registered by ED under this NDA, 3,066 were registered over last 5 years, and a period in which 2,564 of the 3,010 raids were carried out. This means that the speed is increasing lately. Over the last 5 years are the most number of cases registered as well as most number of raids occurred. ED officials say the criticism that the agency is targeting opposition politicians is baseless. And what is the reason that he gives? Because it can take cognizance of an offence already registered by the CBI or state police. So what does he say? Those being brought by us have already been booked by other agencies. So how is ED targeting them? Only after a politician is accused of corruption by the CBI or the Vigilance Department of a state do we come in to probe money laundering. He's seeking all their accusations to the CBI and Vigilance Department that we do not have anything to do with opposition. We follow what CBI does, or we follow after CBI does its work. Also, wrong impression have been created that we have a poor conviction rate. Of the 21 cases of money laundering in which trials have been completed, we have achieved conviction in 18, with 30 people having been convicted. So he said that there is accusation that you only arrest people and then they are not proved guilty. He said that out of 21 cases, 18 people were found guilty. 30 people have been convicted. So next comes this news about La Nina, the triple dip. La Nina. La Nina refers to ENSO phase in which sea surface temperatures are cooler than normal. So you must know that La Nina and El Nino are different. In El Nino, sea surface temperature is hotter than normal, and in La Nina, the sea temperature surface are cooler than normal. Continuance of La Nina into 2023 is not bad news from the Indian standpoint, but it is not the same for other regions. So not bad for India, but it can be bad for other regions. So what exactly is the news? The ongoing La Nina phase of the equatorial Pacific Ocean, of equatorial Pacific Ocean has just been predicted to persist for at least another 6 months. So next 6 months will also be a La Nina period, making it one of the longest ever La Nina episodes in the recorded history. So it is only the 1/3 episode since 1950 to stretch into a third year. So you see, this is the third year in a row that our planet have recorded this La Nina. This is likely to have wide-ranging implications for weather events across the country in the coming months, and also can potentially aggravate both floods and drought in different regions. So different regions may have different types of problems. For example, some areas can be affected with floods, some can be with droughts. So what exactly is this warming of cooling? So Next paragraph explains this. Periodic warming and cooling of surface water in the equatorial Pacific Ocean, a phenomenon prescribed as El Nino Southern Oscillator or ENSO, is known to trigger widespread changes in the atmospheric condition. So this El Nino can obviously trigger widespread changes because it creates heating effect and has a major influence on global weather patterns, including Indian monsoon. La Nina refers to ENSO phase in which sea temperatures are cooler than normal. The warmer phase is known as El Nino. A result of interaction between ocean and wind system, El Nino and La Nina have almost opposite impact on weather events. You see, both have opposite impacts. Triple dip La Nina. El Nino and La Nina episode typically last for about 9 months to a year. Usually they are developed in March-June period and are very strong, in fact strongest during winter, which is November-January in the north hemisphere, and then slightly they get weak or they dissipate by March or April of the next year. Occasionally, however, they continue for much longer period. What about recent years? In recent years, the El Nino of 2015-16 is spread over 19 months and it was one of the longest on road and was dubbed Godzilla due to its sustained high intensity. So this 2015-16, the period of 19 months, it was given name Godzilla. Why? Because of its high intensity. It was one of the longest on record. Current La Nina episode has already surpassed that in its length. It started in September 2020 and it has prevailed for last 24 months. So last record was 19 months. Now it has prevailed for last 24 months. That means 2 years and looks set to continue for another 6 months. And that is why it has been classified as a triple dip La Nina. So last one was Godzilla, this one is triple dip. However, El Nino and La Nina events are not mirror images of each other. So they are not mirror images, they are not like each other. They differ in length and strength. El Nino episode occur more frequently. So this heating process, heating of sea temperatures, sea surface occur more frequently and they are usually associated with more impactful weather events. So El Nino is more impactful, it has more impact on weather. La Nina on the other hand has a longer run, and that is why multi-year La Nina events, even those that continue for more than 12 months, are quite common. El Nino is more likely to be a single year event. You see, it's for just 1 month or less. But La Nina, you see, this time it has been more than 24 months and now next 6 months are also in a row. According to recent paper published by Chinese researchers, almost half, that means 6 out of 13 of all the La Nina events since 1950 have stretched for 2 years, while 3, including the current one, have continued for 3 years. So 6 out of 13 for 2 years, another 3 out of 13 for more than, for in fact 3 years. So you see, over 75% of El Nino events, 15 out of 20 ended within a year. No El Nino have ever stretched into a third year. So we can see that La Nina and El Nino are very different from each other. La Nina can continue for 3 years, but El Nino does not stretch any for 3 years. While prolonged La Nina episodes are not uncommon, the current one differs from the previous 2 triple year events in an important aspects. So what were the earlier events? 1973, 1976, between 1973 and 1976 for this 3 year, and other one was between 1998 and 2001. These were the 2 La Nina episodes which were of 3 years. So how this La Nina, which is now moving towards 3 years, is different? because both these earlier events were preceded by a strong El Nino. So there was El Nino first. There was first a strong El Nino, and then came a La Nina. Prolonged La Nina events in those instances could be explained by the fact that the amount of accumulated heat in the ocean was higher, therefore took a longer time to dissipate. So before these earlier event, before these, so I would say event number 1 and event number 2 for these two. So before event number 1 and event number 2, there was longer heat that was in the ocean. These El Nino were long and strong. So in order to make that ocean cool enough, it needs time. So that is why these cooling time, which is La Nina, were higher and therefore took a long time to dissipate. In the absence of a strong El Nino preceding it, the reason for current La Nina episode is not very clear at the moment. But this time, this latest event, we have not seen a strong El Nino before this La Nina. So why this La Nina is for more than 2 years is not very clear at the moment. You see, evaluating the likely impact in the Indian context, La Nina is associated with good rainfall during the monsoon season. So if there is a La Nina, then there will be a good rainfall during the monsoon season in India. This is opposite of El Nino, which is known to suppress monsoon rainfall. So if El Nino goes on, then it is known to reduce the precipitation, reduce the rainfall. Thus a continued spell of La Nina could lead to expectations of another year of good or normal rainfall during the monsoon. Until now, the monsoon season this year has produced 7% more rain compared to normal. Last year, the seasonal rainfall was almost 100%. This year, 7% more. But even though powerful, this ENSO condition is only one of the several factors that affect monsoon rainfall. There are more factors that can affect this rainfall. There is no one-on-one correlation between ENSO condition and amount of rainfall. This means that you cannot depend on just one factor, just one ENSO condition, that if this is good, then rainfall will be good. There are other factors too. Also, the influence of ENSO is at the macro level. There are wide variations in rainfall at the local level, which are getting exacerbated by climate change. It is just the macro level. If you see at the local level, rainfalls are getting more affected by climate change. The continuance of La Nina further into 2023 is not bad news from Indian standpoint. And why exactly? Because it is expected that there will be more rain, more monsoon season. You can say normal monsoon next year, but it is not the same for many other regions where La Nina has very different impacts. For example, United States. La Nina is associated with very dry winters. Australia, Indonesia, generally in tropical region, La Nina is expected to bring more rainfall. Widespread drought in United States and flooding in eastern Australia. You see, there has been a widespread drought in United States. We have seen this in news. And this flooding in Australia this year could have been the result of a prolonged La Nina. Excessive rainfall in Pakistan, floods came. It become a catastrophe for Pakistan. This excessive rainfall in Pakistan, which is experiencing its worst flooding disaster, can also be blamed in part on La Nina, for which Indian government is helping with humanitarian assistance, also supplying vegetables, fruits and food grains. In its latest bulletin, World Meteorological Organization WMO said the worsening drought in the Horn of Africa and southern United States carried the hallmarks of La Nina. So these were somewhat because of La Nina, and above average rainfall in Southeast Asia and Australasia. So I think this is Australia. So these are because of La Nina. It said that persistence of La Nina was most likely to result in worsening of drought in Africa. So it means that if La Nina goes on for another 6 months, it can have a worse effect for drought in Africa. What is the link of this La Nina with climate change? Every unusual weather event these days is attributed to climate change. But science is not conclusive right now on the linkage of ENSO events with global warming. Srinivasan, a distinguished scientist, so you see, this means that something occurs in the weather event, something unusual or strange, we only relate it to climate change, but scientists do not say so. Srinivasan is a distinguished scientist at the Divesha Center for Climate Change at the Indian Institute of Science in Bengaluru. He said that occurrence of El Nino or La Nina are not very regular. Sometimes they emerge every 2 years. At other times, there have been a gap of every 7 years. So you see, sometimes they occur alternatively every 2 years, and sometimes between one La Nina and between one El Nino there is a gap of 7 years. Historical records do not go very far in the past. As a result, the natural variability of ENSO is not understood very clearly. So this is not very clear. So, and when the natural variability is not itself not clear, then the influence of global warming is difficult to quantify. You see, things are not very clear, so you cannot relate it to global warming. So there have been suggestions that climate change is increasing the frequency and intensity of El Nino and La Nina episodes, but the question is not entirely settled. You cannot answer it based on just climate change, though everything is attributed to climate change. As a part of the reason is the fact that trade winds play a very important role in triggering ENSO event. This you have to learn, that trade winds play a very important role, and the changes in the strength of trade wind are not easily explained by global warming. This cannot be explained easily, the change in the strength of trade winds. But there is clear evidence of another kind of linkage with global warming. And what exactly is the linkage? During La Nina years, the colder surface allows the ocean to absorb more heat from the atmosphere. Consequently, the air temperatures tend to go down. You see, more heat is absorbed by the cool water, so the atmospheric air gets cooled down and it produces a cooling effect. However, as pointed out by the World Meteorological Organization, this is not enough to reverse or neutralize the impact of global warming. So this cooling is not effective enough to reverse or neutralize what global warming is doing, warming our planet inside. Its La Nina cooling influence is temporarily showing the rise in global temperatures, but it will not halt or reverse the long-term warming trend. You see, this is somewhat slowing down the rise in global temperature, so somewhat it is cooling, but it cannot halt, means stop it. It cannot stop or reverse the long-term warming trend. So it is just doing a little bit of help. Incidentally, just a few days ago, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration of the US declared that the month of August this year was the 6th hottest August in the last 14 years. Average global temperatures were about 0.9 degrees Celsius higher than 20th century average. Now this is the word page. You see, there is a picture that in a first Sundar Pichai has visited Indian embassy, and what did he discuss? He exchanged thoughts on expanding India-US commercial, knowledge and tech partnership with Google. This was the main thing discussed. You see, there is not much news about India related international thing. So we will move forward to the economy page. This is about Tata Group. Next come distance brings distrust. Cut it down. Finance Ministry to FinTech. So Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman on Tuesday nudged the fintech industry to break the distance barrier and have more engagements with government and its agencies to enhance trust. Sitharaman was replying to a question by Krish Gopalakrishnan, who is a chairman of Global FinTech Fest GFF 2022 advisory board, who wanted to know how to ensure trust among industry regulators and government. So he asked this question. What Nirmala Sitharaman said further, that I don't want to sound cliched, but distance brings distrust. So cut the distance down, have greater engagement with the government. She said further that everyone in the government, whether the Prime Minister or ministers or think tank Niti Aayog, they are constantly available for engagement, discussions and exchange of ideas. She said that all of these are available. So greater the engagement, greater the trust which gets built up. So I think one sure short way of retaining and building on trust is to keep the constant engagement going. So this is, I think, very easy to understand. What was the question was? Question was, he wanted to know how to ensure trust among industry, regulators and the government. So you see, this was the answer given by her. To a question related to role of central bank and finance ministry on the proposed digital currency. The digital currency is coming soon, I think 2023 or this last month of this year can also be the month that digital currency will be launched. So what she answered on the role of central bank and finance ministry, she said that Reserve Bank will come out with RBI driven digital currency. February 1st, she said, announced in her budget speech that digital rupee or central bank digital currency would be issued by the RBI in current financial year. So that will be RBI driven digital currency, central bank digital currency. In her address at GFF 2022, the minister said that RBI's regulator sandbox mechanism has provided a structured and institutional framework through which fintech companies are now able to test their new products, new innovations before scaling them. So this is about industry, that they can test how exactly their products are working on, what is the scale, what are the new inventions. So this has actually helped in testing it in a controlled environment, and then post that you are able to scale up rapidly so that markets can get benefit and you can accelerate your product innovation. So this is more of industry, not a bit of national news. So now RBI governor said that innovations must be responsible. So warning again mushrooming of lending apps and their a serious recovery prices. You see, lending apps, I explained this many times. In fact, last day I also told you that these lending apps provide loan, instant loan, and then they use illegal practices to recover that. In fact, many suicide cases has also come. So just beware of these lending apps. Reserve Bank Governor Shaktikant Das on Tuesday said that RBI was not interested in penalizing but wanted them to follow rules. So he now talked that these digital lending apps must follow rules. Addressing the third edition of Global FinTech Summit here this evening, he said RBI will continue to be supportive of digital lending. We will in fact go 2 steps forward to discuss with you if you just take 1 step forward. But these innovations also must be responsible and should enhance the efficiency and resiliency of the finance system while benefiting the consumer. So he's talking about positive aspect, that you must be responsible, resilient and efficient. Do not hurt the customer, in fact benefit them. So you see, this was the news for today, and you can read this newspaper by yourself as well.